Hello, it's Bev here. Welcome. And I'm Bev from Living Fabulously, and today I wanted to talk to you about why you'd go gluten-free. And I think for most of us, there's an awareness, certainly, that gluten-related disorders are on the rise. You know, more and more you speak to people and somebody you know is trying a gluten-free diet or lifestyle. And they have done this for a variety of reasons and probably symptoms. So what I wanted to share with you today is 3 primary reasons beyond being diagnosed with the condition of celiac disease or with what I would call non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So I wanted to talk to you about that because I think, you know, based on my research just in some Facebook groups this last 2 weeks, there are a lot of people who've chosen to go gluten-free, but I think a lot of times they have resistance from family and friends. And so I think knowing why you're doing this gluten-free lifestyle is important. But I wanted to give you 3 important facts to motivate you to keep on with what you're doing. So the first one is that wheat is not what it used to be. So what I mean by that is, in the days of our ancestors, crops were grown not as one crop only, so not monoculture crops. They were grown in symbiosis with one another. So you'd have wheat in one field and corn in another and vegetables and so on. But as there was a commercial need and greed, I would say, to get more wheat, allegedly to feed people. But let me tell you, with more research I do, it's just simply a commercial reason that they started using mechanization and then wanting to make the crop, pest resistant. So they genetically modified the wheat as we know it. So wheat no longer resembles what it did in our parents' day, well, if you're my age, certainly your parents, but it has changed and evolved. So it's been tampered with. And I read with great concern that the Roundup that you put in your garden, if you use it, I don't use it because I go chemical free, but the Roundup, it's used worldwide as an insecticide, is a neurotoxin, and that means it damages the transmission of information in the nervous system. And what happens is they actually embed the Roundup in the wheat seed to make it pest and drought resistant. So that is a very important reason why a lot of people, when they have gluten in their diet, have brain fog. So Dr. David Perlmutter, who's a neurologist in the States, has done a lot of research around this. So what I'm saying to you is just not a whim. It's based on fact and science. So the second reason is that gluten is an indigestible protein. Ever felt bloated after you've eaten that bread or that cake or pasta? So what happens is when we, in the days gone by, we weren't eating a lot of processed food. We were probably not under a lot of stress. So modern living has brought with it some 2 things that I can think of that actually create the problem more than normal. If you experience high stress and you're making poor food choices, you're very likely to have what's called impermeable gut or leaky gut. So it's permeable. So it should normally not allow any food particles to go through into the bloodstream. So as I said, with stress and poor food choices, over time, the gut wall or the lining deteriorates. And so what needs to normally happen is that indigestible protein of gluten gluten would just pass through the bowel. But now we have the situation where we've got, leaky gut syndrome, and then people are more prone to bloating and cramps. So you could simply get the bloating because the protein of gluten is indigestible, or you could get it because you have leaky gut as well. And so your brain fog and your stomach cramps together create a really difficult space for you to function really well and be in top form with vitality. And then the third way is that gluten is a pro-inflammatory agent. And what I mean by that is that the immune system creates a response to gluten as if there's an invasion happening. And so what happens is it creates an inflammatory response, probably firstly in the bowel, by creating a lot of mucus. And mucus then is a breeding ground for bacteria and viruses that can also thing. And it then obviously puts your gut microbiome, or the balance of the good bacteria to the bad bacteria, out of balance. But what happens is when you start having chronic inflammation is you are likely to develop an autoimmune condition. So the first sign that you may be headed towards an autoimmune condition is things like joint pain, fatigue, and a number of other symptoms. But the common one that I hear with people, and it's quite interesting, it happens in younger and younger people nowadays, is people complain about joint pain. Joint pain is an inflammatory response, and it usually can be really well managed through a protocol of eating whole foods, as well as reducing or minimizing or cutting out gluten. The best way to test if you should go gluten-free is to do at least 2 to 4 week trial completely gluten-free. And by that I mean not resorting to processed foods that comes in a packet or a box. So yes, you might have to do the tough yards, but it would show you why your body is responding in that inflammatory way. So just to summarize, we talked about wheat not being what it used to be, so it's been tampered with and genetically modified. And you certainly know that because you can just see people around you, things have changed rapidly and it keeps changing. The second one was that gluten is an indigestible protein, and so for many people that's what causes the bloating. It is also high in what we call the FODMAPs. So for somebody who is fructose intolerant, for example, because wheat breaks down into sugar in the body, you can actually have fructose intolerance response as well. And then the last one is that gluten is an inflammatory agent. So that inflammatory agent is really what sets in motion an autoimmune condition. So, it may have been triggered by something else, but most commonly any doctors who are literate in autoimmune conditions are usually recommending a gluten-free lifestyle as well. So, it's beyond being a celiac who has a genetic predisposition to being allergic to the gluten protein. And, even though another interesting point just before I close off is that the gluten testing specifically here in Australia, I'm talking about because I don't know in other areas, when they do genetic testing, they actually test for 4 out of 8 genes that illustrate whether you are gluten intolerant or not. And they determine that you're celiac because you have those 4 markers. Well, the thing is there are other markers, there's 4 more, and I know when I did my genetic testing, I actually had the other 4. So, because they're testing for 4. So that doesn't mean that I'm celiac, but I certainly, even though I may not have the label, so I would fall under the category of non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So yes, just be reasoning with why you want to go gluten-free, and to help you to make those decisions that you make to go gluten-free easier for you, and help you in social situations and at home. I'm running a webinar called Hassle-Free Gluten-Free, and I'd love you to join me. The link is in the show notes. It's bit.ly/hassle-free gluten-free, and I look forward to seeing you there. Bye for now.